Hey there, gang. Thanks so much for tuning in. Patrick King here, coming to you live for our new audio broadcast talking about horses. And today we have a special guest with us, a professional cutting horse trainer, personal performance coach, author, clinician, equine consultant, and so much more. I'd like to welcome to our show Miss Barbra Schulte. Barbara, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Patrick. I am so delighted to be here. I'm very grateful to have this invitation. Honored. Thank you.
Oh, goodness. Well, the honor truly is mine, Barbara. I've got to thank you. When I sent out the message, actually, to you asking if you'd be interested in this, I told you I was going to tell you a little more about why I was so excited to have you on here. Years ago, you wrote for the Quarter Horse Journal. You wrote some monthly editorials for the Quarter Horse Journal. And your articles were actually the first that I had ever read about personal improvement, personal performance, and kind of tapping into our best selves. So to me, it's really special to have you on here because you've kind of led me down the road of lots of other personal performance gurus and coaches and, ideas and thought leaders and that sort of thing that have had really, for me, a huge, huge impact on not only my horsemanship, but my whole life. So I want to first say thank you so much for kind of setting me on that path.
Well, Patrick, first of all, you're so welcome. And a couple of things, I thank you because, of course, I never know in situations like that where I'm writing articles or, people have a book or, you just never know how things affect people. So, of course, I'm grateful because that's the most meaningful thing to me is that someone gets a piece that influences their life and just the way it's meant to be at that moment. So that's great. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I guess another way I could say it was all of this is partly your fault, Barbara.
Well, good. I get blamed for a lot of good things, so that's good. And, Patrick, one thing that I would commend you on is that this whole area that I feel so very privileged and grateful that I've kind of dived into is just a personal passion as well as horsemanship and as well as cutting horses, of course. It's such powerful information. And if I could stand up and wave a flag, I would say that I wish it was taught in school. I wish it was taught in parenting classes because it's information that truly is performance changing, life changing, and sometimes people think that it's kind of like airy fairy, but it's really truly based on research, and it's also based on a lot of personal experience, and it makes all the difference. And it's shortcuts. It makes learning efficient and work with our horses to the maximum because, of course, our horses are like lightning, bolts to how we are.
Yes.
So anyway, I'm glad that you recognized and glad that it was impactful for you. Good for you.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, very, very impactful, and it really did change a lot. It changed a lot about the way that I was thinking at the time when I was reading those articles and things like that, and it's changed the way that I look at the horses, the way that I look at horsemanship, because, and I tell folks in my own horsemanship clinics and our dressage clinics quite a bit, I tell them, you are your horse's fitness coach and you are your horse's life coach, because they have no one else. And so it's fantastic for us as riders to have folks that have programs such as yours. If we've got to be our horse's life coach, every coach needs a coach. So to have access to that information is tremendous. So can you tell us a little bit, Barbara, about what got you started into the peak performance field?
Well, I didn't really recognize it so clearly until I didn't recognize my interest in it so clearly until about, I would say, 6 or 8 years into my cutting horse training career. And what I noticed, especially at the larger events, is that often the same people won, and they didn't always have the very best horses. It wasn't like the best horse always won. It was these same riders were very, very consistent. And of course that is true in any sport, I guess. But I just kind of thought like that it was just so interesting that horse was, a well-trained horse, but a medium athlete, as opposed to this unbelievable athletic horse that was also well-trained that, went out of the competition. I was curious about that. I knew that something was going on, and that was early on in my professional cutting horse training career. And I always was intrigued by things of the heart and psychology and that sort of thing. And my sister, Tootie, heard an interview by Dr. Jim Lair one night on the radio driving with a horse trailer, and he was talking about the personal performance training, and his program was called Mentally Tough. So she wrote it down and gave it to me. I read his book, practiced almost everything in it, read it over and over again, and my consistency showing just took this huge incline. And I was still so intrigued by it. So I decided to go do a live event in Orlando, Florida, and my timing was perfect. They were looking for coaches in different disciplines at that time, and I became certified and went back there and studied. And it's truly the performance training of Olympic and professional athletes, business people, and it's just fabulous information. And of course, over time, as everything does, it's grown, expands, and it's just all so interesting. And I am thrilled to see the impact on people's riding, and not just their riding, but also just the realization of their joy in their journey, and their, knowing that their own road and what they're learning from their horse and their choices, all of that fits together. And so I just love coaching and love teaching and love practicing it myself. And it is a practice. The first time that we think, I've got that, well, it's just like one of those things that we all will do for the rest of our lives, that enjoy that and understand the tools.
Right. So you talk about practicing mentally tough before you got to the event. And this might lead us into some more questions, and maybe I'm kind of jumping ahead in the deal here. But how does one practice being mentally tough? I know we all see riders and people, friends, maybe we're guilty of it, that things just turn to crap and our brain turns to malto meal and we just kind of go on autopilot. So how do you, in moments like that, how do you practice being mentally tough? How does that work?
Well, first of all, I think it would be really helpful to identify what mentally tough means. And what it means is, at least as explained, originally by the then LGE Sports Science, what it means is that when we go out to put our talent and skill and all the practicing and all the work and all the hopes and all the dreams, and let's just talk about showing for a moment, and we enter that show arena, what we don't want to do is leave best, in practice pen or in the practice pen at home. And of course, what we don't want to do is feel like we're kind of shaking and our brain turns to mush. And So being mentally tough is that ability to call up a very, very, very special state of emotion. So I'm going to explain that state of emotion by asking everyone to think about a time that they felt like Godzilla. And it could be on your horse, it could be in your career, it could be when you do a certain, like another hobby, but when you, no matter how you really feel on the inside, maybe grumpy or tired or whatever, you have the ability to just get into this kind of a peak state. You're very calm, but you're excited and you're focused, and it's like, come on, give me the ball. Like, I got this. And even if I make a mistake, I can, it's no problem. Well, that state for most of us, when we live our everyday lives or ride our horses, if we feel that way, we do well, and even if we don't do well, we're still happy, and we think that the sun was shining or the moon was in the right position, that we, it'll be like 2 months or a year before we ever do that again. But the reality is that very special state, which is a blend of emotions, and this is all after tons of research on this, is a skill, and that's what is like the coolest thing. It's an ability. It's not like, say, Patrick, that you were born with it and you could just turn it on demand. And I was just like really good in Fridays in the morning. Like it's a skill, just like learning to get lead departure would be a skill. And so to me, that was really thrilling news. And then the other part of that is that it's so easy to know if we're there because of how we feel. And if we don't have that feeling, we know that we're not there. And then the other cool part about it is that because our mind and our body and our emotions are really inseparable. In other words, if I get up and dance around and smile, it's going to evoke a feeling of joy and happiness. If I put my head down and think of something sad. Well, when we ride our horses, when we open our shoulders, which everyone knows, and all the training, when we lift our eyes, when we breathe, that calls up these emotions. And when we pair that with certain ways of thinking, then it all works together to bring up the state. So back to your original question, how do you do that in preparation for competition? It takes practice. It takes practice at home. It takes practice just sitting, in a chair and imagining. Our mind and our bodies don't know the difference between something vividly imagined and the real thing.
Right.
And as we practice, then when we get on our horse, the more we practice and the more familiar we get with that state, it almost becomes like we're coming home because we feel so connected to our horse. We feel so connected to the situation, and the more we practice it, the more we can kind of slip into it. So I would say that it's really the ability to practice, not the ability, that the commitment to practice it and to, first of all, recognize how impactful it is, and secondly, to practice. And one last thing that I want to say, Patrick, and this is the thing, well, it's not the last thing I'm going to say.
I hope not.
But here is the key thing, and this is the thing that is so always makes me so excited to understand, is that when we do this practice and we understand how to get into this kind of specialized, kind of almost like an emotional soup that's just got all the right things going, that then our body has just the right muscle tension, our heart rate is just right, our brain waves are clicking along at just the right, wavelength. And it allows us to physically do what we want to do. When we are in like a default state, whatever that is, which could be mad at somebody, or it could be, like you don't think the judge likes you, or you could be like really tired and you like don't really care. If you get into any of those other kinds of states, because of the mind, body, emotion connection, our body doesn't work as well. So like if we're really nervous, doesn't impair our vision, but it narrows our vision. It makes our muscles tight. We can't feel. We clutch the reins. We grab a horse in the sides. We don't know we're doing that, or we don't want to do it. So these skills are what allow us to be who we really are on our horse when we get on anytime, in a practice, at a clinic, on the trail, in a show situation. So that's why it's so, just amazing to me. And, people will say, just keep going in there, you'll get it. Well, that is certainly true to a certain extent, but it doesn't have to be so long and drawn out and go through all the, self-inflicted, self-beating up, and all that thing. So.
Interesting. So you're talking about kind of the motion creating emotion. So basically kind of utilizing the physiology to tap into the psychology, yeah?
Yes, along with mental tools.
With the mental
tools. Which would be things like a really clear vision of what you want instead of what we don't want.
Gotcha.
Because what happens when we're nervous is we're really, again, we don't mean to, but we're mentally rehearsing everything that we just dread would go wrong. And then with that comes, I'm going to be so embarrassed, and and then like, what's my old trainer going to think? And then it can just go like wildfire, and then pretty soon you don't even know that you're on your horse. And so it's understanding, and that's the other thing that I love so much, is that the tools are so concrete, like the visualization tool, a tool called scripting, where you actually figure out, if you had the best coach that like if you could say, okay, let's say you're the best coach ever for me, Patrick. If I could have you on my shoulder in the show arena, what would you be saying to me? Because I know it would be like telling me, just, okay, use this foot, look up, and in a tone that would kind of maybe soothe, or then maybe when it was time, okay, let's go. Okay, so what we can do is we can script that, and we can be our own inner coach. And in fact, that ability to coach ourselves and the way that we talk to ourselves, both in and out of the arena, is probably the most powerful of all the tools. So just a simple thing like combining what we say to ourselves with an awareness of our physiology, which what we say to ourselves might be reminding ourselves, eyes up, breathe, stay cool, okay, let's go. Like it's like a combination of technical reminders along with emotional energy reminders of either to like slow down or speed up or be authoritative or present yourself or whatever it is. And so it just gets to be really fun, just really fun, because they work. And then also, too, if we make errors, instead of like, let's say in writing you drop a lead behind, and so you're like almost all the way around the circle, and you're still going, I can't believe I dropped that lead. Even if you picked it up, you're still like rehearsed playing that
right.
There goes my score and all that stuff. You just go, no problem. Next time, let's go. there are ways of thinking that can keep you in the moment and also keep you from being distracted.
So riding forwards instead of riding backwards, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Barbara, a lot of this, and please forgive me if my terms are off, but a lot of this sounds like some of the studies that I've done of the neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. Is that similar?
Yeah.
Is it along the same lines?
Yes, I've never studied NLP directly,
Okay.
but I'm very aware of NLP, and I do know that much of it is very similar, because like, as in all things, truth is truth, right?
Well, absolutely.
So,
the brain works the way the brain works. The body works the way the body works. Yeah.
yeah, just like great horsemanship can be approached by many different avenues, but it still is, connecting to a horse.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, absolutely.
Interesting.
It would be very similar.
I'm going to go with a little side shoot here. And this conversation, I'm sure, is going to be full of back roads and side shoots. But so you talked about going in for your cutting ride and having somebody on your shoulder. I'm just curious, who's on your shoulder?
Oh, that's an interesting thing.
It's totally like our wrap-up question, but I didn't want to forget it. I thought that was so great that you just sort of put that out there for me to grab, so I'm grabbing that.
Yeah, good. You know what? I think at this point in time, Patrick, because I have utilized these skills for so long, I would be coaching myself to be in the moment. I would be reminding myself of those nuances that make a difference. Nice. So, and also the nuances in the moment. So like in a cutting run, when you walk to the herd, what's going on is different than when you're in the herd. Like when
Yes.
you're in the herd, you want to be able to look around, take a breath, make a good decision, and cattle are constantly moving, so sometimes it gets to be really, very hairy, mm-hmm. because we get nervous and we don't even see the cattle, and we drop our eyes. And anyway, have a broad vision, and so I give myself reminders, and when it's time to drive the cow up, I'll say, drive, drive. This is in my mind, because I've done this now for so many years, and what I find is if I don't do that and don't remind myself, that I'll forget it. I mean I'll do some semblance of it, but to
Yes.
have that edge of what it really takes, the kind of run I want to have, or how, about your horse, or I might remind myself, like when I put my hand down, sit down, stay soft, be still, be still, be still, watch mm-hmm. the cow, be still. It's almost like a mantra. So I guess I'd have to say I'm on my own shoulder.
That's awesome. I love that. So, and I think that's a fantastic point to kind of expand on, or to just draw out a little bit more, that with your years of experience, you're still talking to yourself that way. You're still giving yourself the reminders. And it kind of takes me back to a line that I heard from Zig Ziglar. I'm sure you probably have heard of his name.
Yeah.
But he mentioned that someone told him at one point, well, that motivational stuff, that doesn't last. And his reply was, well, neither does bathing, and that's why we recommend it often.
That's pretty cute. That's great.
And so that makes sense to me, right? That you're constantly going through, even after all these years, you're going through that script, even though your body knows what to do, your brain knows what to do, but you still have to be present and active in carrying it all out.
Yes, because what it does, among many things, again, it gets my body in just the right kind of, just the right physiology, right? If I'm not paying attention, not as focused, and my eyes kind of wander, not because I mean for them to wander, but just because I'm just kind of taking it for granted, right?
Sure.
I'm just not going to be as on it, so to speak. And when we go into an event, or when, really this should be something that we do all the time with our horses, it really takes energy, or we have energy naturally. We have some kind of energy. The energy might be, like preoccupied with work, or it might be, like I said, fatigue. But we bring to our horses, and we bring to a situation, we bring energy. And when we show in competition, we truly are a performer on a stage. That is our time, and that takes really, high, positive, managed energy and connection with our horse, connection in that matter what each event cutting, or jumping. And to get into that is, first of all, it's fun. That's why we do it. And it allows our body to be in the right physiology, and it also allows our mind to be like slow enough so that we can be responsive instead of reactive. We're so connected to the situation. So it's really, awesome
That's
stuff.
fantastic. That's gonna segue us into a little bit of a discussion about learning. And you mentioned, and I love this. I love the way this conversation is flowing here. This is so much fun for me. You mentioned going into a default state when you're not being active, or potentially going back into a default state when you're not active about keeping yourself in the right mental frame. So when we're trying to learn, whether it's these kind of mentally tough skills, or when we're learning cutting, when we're learning horsemanship, when we're learning dressage, I find it in the clinics that I teach. I find it very often that when folks feel a little bit overwhelmed with either the information or the task, or whatever it might be, they revert to that default state, and that sort of shuts them off to learning. How do we stay open when we encounter these roadblocks?
Well, one thing, Patrick, and we haven't talked about this, and it really sets the stage for your question, is that there are really, just for the sake of discussion and understanding and clarity, there is another aspect to this whole quote-unquote mental training, mental skill. And that is really how we view ourselves as, are we capable, or are we where we're supposed to be? Are we just, we're never going to get this, those voices in our head that basically are constantly telling us that we're not enough. We should be different, and we should have learned this by now, or I shouldn't be having this trouble with my horse, and I should be able to absorb all this. And when those kinds of voices are going on, they really cause us to shut down, and it also robs us of our joy. And first of all, every one of us rides a horse for our own purpose. Most of us are joined because of our joy for the horses. But then we kind of get, depending upon, how we view ourselves, we kind of get kind of wound up in, but I should know more, or I wish I had more money, and I'm not as good as X person. And so I think people feel that way just in general. But then when they get into a group of people, like at a clinic or sometimes at a show, it's more about comparison to others and also some insecurities of fearing that they're just not good enough or sometimes how they're lacking. And those thoughts just kind of drown out things. So that's one part of the learning aspect. And by the way, that is a huge part that is now part of what I teach and how I feel about learning with horses. I think we have to get the personal meaning piece and the purpose of why we do what we do with our horses. Really give that thought, because that piece of it, that love of the horse, that love of learning, that love of an event. For some people, it's love of competition. Other people, it's love of the trail. Whatever that is so personal. And when we really connect to that and get this kind of a quiet confidence inside that kind of shuts down our own internal voice, that there's that inner voice again, right? Mm-hmm. That is comparing us. Then we're like open and grateful and appreciative. And then we add the personal performance skills that we just talked about, like getting into this state to that when it's our time to ride. And now we've got it going because, we're okay with where we are. We don't have to, we can reach for more, but our joy and our self validation is not going to be dependent upon something in the future that feels like we'll just never really ever get there. So it's really about the journey. So that's one part. And then the other part, and I teach this a lot, is that riding is basically, to me, it involves three sets, very distinct sets of skills that as we get it going, just all weave together beautifully. And one is this whole personal meaning piece, purpose, and our values, and kind of doing things our own way because it's the way we love it. And second is the personal performance skills. And then third are the technical skills, which of course are the horsemanship skills, the dressage skills, the cutting skills, the all of that is really, in most cases, that what we always hear about, right? When we go take a riding lesson, we're going to learn how to lift a shoulder or whatever. Mm-hmm. And really, it's as we see our riding and we break it down into tiny little pieces. Okay, this piece is what I know about lifting a horse's shoulder at this point in this pattern. These are the cues. This is the response. This is the release. When we start to get that, it's the personal performance skills that I was talking about earlier that allow us to do that. But what happens with all of us is that we tend to see learning as this huge, broad, sweeping brush. Like we're either like terrific or we just suck. Sorry for the language.
Right.
We're just like,
oh, no worries. We've had much worse on this program already.
Yeah, we're just bad. We're bad riders. Mm-hmm. The horse is bad. We're never going to get it. All of that. But in goal setting, if we can learn to, for each ride, just set tiny little goals that are our personal next step that we need to ride, to to improve our riding, and it's something we can control. Like we could control, we could program that inner voice, so that would be the mental skill, and we could program our eyes up, and then we could, program in our mind, okay, at this stride, I'm going to give this, rein cue or foot cue, and you visualize that, because this is the piece that I'm working on. And if we have patience, and if we know what that piece is, and if, we need mentors for that, or, clinics, however we get the information. But when we get those little pieces right, and we combine it with these, mental, emotional, physical tools that I was talking about, and we are like so grateful to have this incredible privilege to get on the back of a horse. I mean, how lucky are we, to reach for more and to have our friends. When we get all those pieces going in the right direction together, then we have a journey that's personal, that's about ourselves, it's about our horse, it's in bite-sized pieces, and we're mindful of our joy. So, when you talk about learning, I think that encouraging each person, knowing that their journey is enough. Not only is it enough, it's awesome. And to know the pieces and to be patient about the baby steps. There's a book called The Talent Code, and because you like this sort of thing, Patrick, are you familiar with that?
I am not, but I am writing it down. The Talent Code. I'm going to find it. I'm going to have it.
Okay, so here's it changed. It really completely changed the way I taught riding, and here's why. The author's name is Daniel Coyle, and he traveled the world in search of hotbeds of talent where, like, baseball players from the Caribbean, or, dancers, ballet dancers from Russia, and, Olympians from certain places in the world. And he would go there and study what was going on. And, sometimes he thought, well, people in those parts of the country have, certain athleticism or something, but he didn't find that at all. He found that the people were coached in a very specific way. And here's what it is. And this is what changed my life. It changed my riding, and it changed my life. He chunked it into tiny pieces. So let's say you're practicing music. You would practice the slow part of a composition. Mm-hmm. Sorry for those music lovers out there that I'm not. My words may not be good.
It's okay.
But
I'm
anyway,
right there with you. So you and I are cool on this one. Everybody else can just pick up the pieces.
Yeah, exactly. And then, like, maybe there's a fast part. Okay, so they would start learning this piece, not by playing the piece, but by, like, practicing getting the very beginning of the slow measures. There you go, measures, correct. And then playing until the place where an error was made. And where the error was made was the place that was like the gold mine to know what to learn next. So there would be a correction, instruction. And by the way, all of the finest coaches talked in terms of analogies, like this is like this feels like that. That was one of the ways of coaching. But anyway, so then they would start over to the part in the slow measure. And then hopefully within a time or two, they could get by that place where they fell off. Well, now they're falling off the cliff at a new note, a new set of notes. But they loved the errors. Like, they were taught to love the errors. And they were, so they were done. They learned all of these pieces of music in these tiny chunks. And then all of a sudden, they could just, like, put it all together. So what do we do with our riding? We just go out there and ride, like we don't, or at least I did before that. I didn't really appreciate that chunking. So now if I work, of course, on the flag for cutting, I'm very clear, okay, this, I'm working on this skill, okay? Now I'm going to work on this skill. And this is where the horse, is, either the horse or my riding or whatever declines. I'm going to really take a look at that, and I'm going to start over.
Gotcha.
And breaking that down for horses and riders, and also learning to seek the errors instead of dreading them was fabulous.
Yes.
It's great information.
So you're riding up until the point where you lose the notes. If we're going back to the pianist idea. And then you're kind of embracing those errors. I love that because, I always make the joke anytime I'm roping that, every time I rope to throw the misses out of my rope, and someday it'll have nothing but catches left.
That's pretty cute. I like that.
And I think about everything in our horsemanship as being very much that way, so that I'm kind of loving the way you're talking about this idea of embracing the errors, because I think that's kind of the same thing. I always joke to people that the horse has a finite number of wrong answers, and every one we get is one less that he has left. And, we don't know what that magic number is. It might be 45 million, but every one that we get is one less that's left. And so that sounds very much along the same lines of thinking.
Yeah, very much so. And also with errors, and, with our horses, it's like by the time the error is made, really something was happening way before that. The error is really the expression of a sequence of either we dropped our eyes, or we didn't keep a leg on, or, we lost the tempo. And so then by the time the error is expressed, so that's why it's so important, like in watching videos or in just, someone watching us, to see where did things begin, because that's the place of the correction. And in this whole journey, the thing about it is it's forever. Like it never really stops, because there's I'm sure you love to continue to learn. I love to continue to learn. And these mental skills, there's when you're talking about you still have to practice them, it's not just practicing them, it's like experiencing a deeper level. It's like experiencing a deeper level with a horse. It's the same thing. So that's why understanding the mental skills, understanding this idea of chunking and, and errors, and also getting the personal meaning piece, so that, we just never lose sight of the privilege to do this, is just, it just completely changes the whole experience, from like a kind of a threat that we'll never get it in like a broad brush with no way to approach it, to really having tools to do it.
I love that. And the being continuously aware and always in that moment of doing it, then it sort of becomes less of a tactic and more of a religion, maybe. It's just part of who you are at that point.
Yes. It's the journey. I did an interview with my main mentor. I've had many mentors, and like you, enjoy reading, lots of people and listening to interviews and that sort of thing. But he was, in the interview I did with him, he was talking about that it's not about the medals, because of all of the Olympians that they've worked with. What they have found is that without this sense of the joy of the journey, and your values and your purpose, which is so personal, that without that, when the measurement is according to external standards, which could either be like a trophy, which of course we all want to win. I am not diminishing that. I'm all about that. But when that's the only standard, or it's like to be acknowledged by someone that says, I think you're doing a good job, and of course we love that. But when his words were, it's who we are becoming, and it's the joy of the chase, and the and the next layer that we cover, rather than the outcome. And because we can't control the outcome, and we're always going to be on the journey forever. We are.
Yes.
So that it also, when we know, this is the cool thing. This is like the really cool thing. That when we know that, when we understand that peace, that personal peace, how important it is, because then we won't talk to ourselves in any other way than when we talk to ourselves like a really good friend. Like, come on, Barb, you can do it. Stay cool. We'll figure this out. Whatever. And then you put like the personal performance skills with it, and then you are working on your technical skills. When you get all of those things aligned, then your writing just like automatically takes off. And you can't always kind of keep it in perfection, because we all kind of course, have our lives and our emotions and all of that. But when you get all of those pieces together, it just is what allows joy in the progress and allows awesome results in the arena.
Nice. Yes.
So.
Wow, that's great stuff. And you mentioned the process and how enjoyable that is, and how it's not about the trophies and it's not about the ribbons or the buckles. And I think it's important for all of the folks listening at this point, because I missed it in your introduction, and I have major apologies to give for missing this in your introduction. But we talk about it not being about the trophies and not being about the ribbons and buckles. And you're no stranger to those either. You're definitely not the proverbial all hat and no cattle. In other words, I guess what I'm saying is there's a lot of people out there peddling a bunch of BS, right? Talking about the
watch
rainbows.
It. Those are my initials.
Oh, goodness, sorry.
I'm
Talking about...
playing with you. It's fine. I'm just playing with you. Go ahead.
No, goodness. But there's a lot of people that talk about these things, and they don't have anything to back it up with, right? They're talking about rainbows and fairy tales. And you've got the proof, you've got the measuring sticks, basically, to prove that what you're talking about is real. And it works, it's effective, and can you just spend a moment, and I know you've got a laundry list of accomplishments, but can you spend just a minute here for our listeners and tell them exactly, or tell them a little bit about the accomplishments that you've achieved in your career?
Okay. I was the first, or am, I guess was, the first woman to win the National Cutting Horse Association Open Derby. I was the first woman to win the NCHA, is the National Cutting Horse Association 5- and 6-year-old at the specific age of horse. Open Summer Spectacular. Super Stakes, excuse me. And those we have in cutting, we have a triple crown. So, I won, one leg in the 4-year-old and, one leg in the 5-6-year-old. And then, the Augusta Futurity. I was the first woman to win that. And I am in the Cowgirl Hall of Fame, which is probably one of the most meaningful honors. And I have coached people that have won a lot of national events. I have won about $850,000 in my career so far. And I was given the Women's Sports Foundation Female Equestrian of the Year award a number of years ago. And just this past year, I was inducted into the National Cutting Horse Members Hall of Fame, which is really all about your contribution to the industry, to the sport, to the NCHA. So that was a high honor, very meaningful honor to me.
For sure.
So,
wow. Well, congratulations on that, and on everything in that
thank
list.
You.
And that's what I think is so important for people to understand and to recognize, because I know sometimes it can sound, and I'm sure you get this, and if not, please correct me, but I'm sure it can sound, I think you even made the comment, kind of airy-fairy, It can sound like we're getting too sweet, and now we've got to all hold hands and sing Kumbaya and tie-dye T-shirts, and not that those things are bad. I mean, that's all fun stuff too. But I think it's really important for people to understand that this is real. And not only have you done this yourself, but you've coached a lot of successful riders with these ideas also. And that, to me, is what makes it real. Because it's like you said, you're not just the talented gal who is able to do this stuff. You're also the talented gal who has the skills to impart this to others. And that, I think, is most important in this industry. Because if we can't pass it on, then it's useless, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, I also feel I feel really blessed that God gave me the passions, the really natural passions that I have. One is my love of the horse and riding. Another one is, I was talking about it earlier, this whole idea of really human potential. And the third one is I really love to teach. And, when, you were talking about making it really specific, and so it's not airy-fairy. So it really does make a difference and really does improve someone's riding. Like the simplest things on the personal level would be like writing a gratitude journal in the morning, writing 3 things for which you're just so grateful that center around your life with horses. And doing that every day, because what I'm talking about is training, is effort put into something. And most of the time we don't know. I mean, we don't want to be nervous. We don't want to feel like we're not good enough. We don't want to have that gnawing feeling in our stomachs, like, having no idea, what to do or how we're going to get there. We don't want to have that, but we don't really know what to do. And I think that, I know that in this realm that I am so happy that I have a natural love of and have pursued, that for those people who choose to do this work and commit some energy to it, will reap rewards beyond what they could really have ever dreamed. And the cool thing about it is that it's like really fun work. It's really like wonderful work. It's not like taking a beating or taking castor oil or something. It's very, but it is very specific because, we can think anything is a good idea, but unless we really practice it and make some changes, it'll still be a good idea, but it won't make a difference in our writing or in our lives, which is like the triple bonus about all of this is like, that's probably the biggest comment I get all the time is, it's really changed how I do everything. Or I've used so many of the tools and how I do things. So.
Gotcha. Awesome. So, can we talk a minute about fear and confidence? Because I think I know, based on some of your articles that I've read and many of the articles that I've read from you in the past, that's something that you work with and you deal with quite a bit with riders.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm talking about fear with riders, I tend to think about two different kinds of fear, right? And we touched on one already, kind of the fear of failure, the fear of looking bad or not succeeding. So that kind of egoic fear, right? And then we have the actual physical fear, right? The fear of getting hurt or worse, right? What do you do? What tips do you have? Something like that for riders? Or maybe first, where do you think that comes from?
Well, a couple of places, Patrick. Sometimes before I say that, I just want to comment that, and I'm sure that you feel this way too, I'm such a big proponent about safety. And often, riders get into situations, with their horse, and again, they don't intend to, but it was it was setting themselves and their horse up to not do well. And sometimes it's because they think they should be able to do something, for this horse, okay, like by now we should be able to go down this trail, whatever. So I'm
just a bold assumption.
Yes, I'm one to say that if you are in a situation and you feel physically fearful and you maybe have a horse that you don't realize, it has needs that you haven't learned yet how to deal with that. But anyway, to listen to that kind of fear and to be patient with yourself and to get help and to not risk putting yourself in a dangerous situation because you're kind of pressing yourself to do things. Or maybe your horse is 20 years old and, it's the end of winter and you think you should be able to just go hop on it and it's really too fresh, so you get bucked off or whatever it is. So really, really big about that. And, when you're not sure what to do, but feel like for whatever reason there's this voice inside of you saying, well, you should know that. You should know that. This is embarrassing that you don't know that, but just go ahead and do it. That it is always better. It is always best to get a coach or get a trainer or to figure out how to get direct feedback. Because people, this is the point that I was going to say, is that I see my heart hurt for people because they feel like they don't have confidence. But it's not really their fault because it's not set up well. Like nobody would have confidence in that situation. Like trying to show a horse that is not completely trained, and so you put your hand down and cutting, and then it doesn't turn, and then but the person wants to train the horse, but then they think that they lose, or then they lose their confidence, whereas like way too big of a step So I would say, number one, to listen to the voice of safety and to have patience. I would say to understand, or to try to, as best you can, untangle, like, is there a voice inside of you that's saying you're not good enough because you didn't, the same kind of voice that made you, that you felt that way when you didn't make your high school basketball team or something, like, is there something in that, like, that I'm not good enough kind of thing, and to work on that with, like, some gratitude and some, really looking at your values. If it's a nerves kind of fear, like you feel like, you have a really good horse, or, you feel confident in your horse, and you know your horse is ready, and you have the technical skills, that's where the mental skills will help. So I think it's really having the wherewithal to break down. I talked before about the personal meaning part, and then I talked about the mental skills, and then I talked about the technical skills. Like, no amount of personal performance, like being confident, clear, calm, bold, is going to rescue someone from getting bucked off a saddle bronc at the rodeo,
Right.
So it's like, and so, so it's like really seeking, either from being a voracious learner, like I know you, it sounds like you are, and studying this kind of information, as well as technical skills, getting direct feedback, and putting yourself in situations that you enjoy, and enjoying the journey instead of putting pressure on yourself without the tools. I don't know if I answered that well, but
no, I think that was great.
Think and when I do private consulting with people, we really look at, the first thing I start talking about is, okay, tell me about your horse. Like, how do you feel about your horse, and how do you think your riding skills line up with that horse? And then if they're, working on their own without a trainer, it's like, okay, well, let's talk about that. Or if they're in a barn and, for whatever reason, they just don't feel like it's a big match with the trainer, we look at that, because there's just so many pieces, plus the part about that we talked about in the beginning, about your ability to breathe and talk to yourself and all of that. So I'm really about trying to find the chunks, going into the chunks, the technical chunks, the mental skills piece, the personal piece, and seeing, like, what's really going on and how can we adjust it, and, how can we find mentoring, and how can we find support for your true needs, and then, work on these personal performance skills.
So the self-awareness is really, by the sound of it, to me, the self-awareness is the biggest piece of it all, yeah?
Yes, I think so. Yes, and sometimes we have to have someone to help us untangle it, because we are in our own thing, and we can't see the forest for the trees. So that's why,
Yes.
Having a coach or someone that you trust, and someone who's not trying to kind of, lobby for their own ideas. Because sometimes people are so relieved when they, realize that maybe they could have a good time without competing.
Right.
Or maybe somebody suggests to them, and they're in competition, well, if it's hard, why don't you just trail ride? But they don't want to trail ride because they love competition. So having, like, the confidence to explore all those things is really important.
Right,
Brilliant.
absolutely. And I know I've even found with quite a number of my students that are getting involved in the Western dressage
Mm-hmm.
that they're now doing these virtual shows where you can ride in your arena at home and have that filmed and actually compete that way. Uh,
Oh, that's
which,
cool.
yeah, which for a lot of riders is taking out a lot of the mental anxiety.
Oh, uh-huh.
And I've found it's really interesting because I've found it's actually getting more people involved in trailering to a show because they take care
Yeah.
of the anxiety, they take care of the confidence part at home. So it's very much to me. And so now I'm kind of getting excited because it's bridging all this together. Sorry, but
No, no, go for it.
it kind of gets them out of that default state and it gives them a new default state where they know what to do. They know how to handle
Mm-hmm.
it because they've done it 2 or 3 or 20 or whatever, however many times at home for a video camera. So now they have the new script when things go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I found it's
Mm-hmm.
getting people actually involved in the, I don't want to say real shows because it's real competition, but in the live shows, hauling to a horse show, hauling to a competition. Um, so that's
Oh,
very,
that's awesome.
yeah, that's very interesting to me how that just kind of flowed in there. So sorry for my interjection right there, but
No, no,
um,
no. But so to just build on that, so what would be ideal is um, if people knew clearly the tools and how to apply them at home, then they could practice, at home, like understanding that when you perform and you get into this like calm, energized, clear, focused state,
mhm,
like that they would know, like recognize that how important that is and that it is easier for them at home to access it, but like remember it and
right,
and cultivate it and practice it. And then even when they have those good rides for the video camera, then what they can do is like practice that same ride. They could go, in the evening or in the morning and sit in a chair and put themselves in an arena that they know but have the same feelings that they had at home. See, that would be like baby steps. And that's what I'm talking about, like baby steps. But it
right.
was,
So that's part of the chunking, yes?
yes, absolutely. So that's cool. So Western Dressage does that, huh?
Yes, it's fantastic. And there were a lot of people, I think, in the beginning of the whole idea that thought that it was going to be taking riders away from the schooling shows and the recognized shows. And I know what I've found is actually the opposite with a lot of my students who were originally just kind of casual dressage riders, if there is such a thing. But
Uh-huh.
because of the virtual shows, they've gathered enough interest to actually go out and compete in the live events, which has
Wow,
been,
that's so cool.
yeah, it's been really really neat.
Mm-hmm.
It's been very cool. So where was I going with this? I feel like I had something else that was jumping off of this, and I got so excited and sidetracked.
No, that's okay. I love that. That's a really very interesting. I had never heard of that.
Oh, see, I'm
That's
going
a
to have to share
really
some of that
awesome
information
idea.
with you. Actually, in
Yeah.
our broadcast number 1, our very first episode of this Talking About Horses broadcast, I chatted with Jen Johnson, the president of North American Western Dressage, and we talked all about the virtual shows and how people can get involved with those. So, see there, Byron, this is
That's a
just how I
brilliant.
know that our guests are not checking in to see how these things work. See, that's all that is. So, no, I'm sorry. Well, that's going to kind of put me into something that I've put quite a bit of thought into when we talk about safety. You were talking quite a bit about the importance of safety and the confidence that comes into that, and having the chunking down and the skill sets and things like that. I kind of started a couple of years ago joking with some friends of mine when we were starting colts. We would make the joke, safety third. Uh, Which, you know, when you're starting colts at a public event, that's just really funny, right? Safety
Yes.
third as the colt goes bronking around the arena. But you know, the more that I think about that, the more and so this is just a conversation between you and I that everybody else gets to be privy to, which is how I love these audios to go. But I've begun more and more to believe in the idea of safety third, not
Oh.
as safety being third in importance, but as
Uh-huh.
safety coming third in the equation. And I
Oh.
feel like we need to have understanding first.
Uh-huh.
Because if we don't have
Uh-huh.
understanding, we're not going to have safety, right?
Uh-huh.
And we
Yes.
need to
Awesome.
have confidence second. Because if we're not confident, we're not going to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
if we had understanding, but so I use the analogy a lot of times with my students about flying an airplane, right? If I were to go to pilot school and want to learn how to fly an airplane, and I were to read the textbook on flying airplanes, right? And I'm not
Mm-hmm.
mechanically inclined at all, so this should be a fearful enough topic. But if I were to read the manual on flying airplanes, you probably wouldn't want to be along with me on my first flight, right? Because I might have the
Mm-hmm.
understanding, but I wouldn't have the confidence.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be safe, right? I'd get up there, and the first
Mm-hmm.
storm cloud I came to, I would probably submissively urinate, and then the plane would go down. Um, and then
Yeah.
there's the other side, right? Where we can have confidence, but no understanding, right?
Uh-huh.
It's like when
Uh-huh.
I say, hey, Danny, here, hold my beer, watch this. You know, that's
Uh-huh.
confidence without understanding. That's called masculine
Uh-huh.
stupidity, right? Um,
Uh-huh.
but
Yeah, that's funny.
so I feel like unless we have first understanding and second confidence, we can't be safe at all.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And so again, I'm just kind of bouncing that off of you a little bit to hear maybe your thoughts on that, what you think about that.
Well, I love how you break that down because in my, in my brand, not brand, but in the horsemanship training that I do, and it sometimes it's working with, in situations where it may be unsafe, but more it's been, with competition and cutting and that sort of thing. So what you just explained is very helpful to me to kind of break down the whole safety equation, to help people to understand, where it might be breaking down,
Mm.
like where they haven't set themselves up for success. Like I'm really about setting ourselves up for success to the best of our ability, not leaving stones unturned, or at least
Yes.
known type of stones. So I think that is always about a lot of clarity and
Yes.
understanding, like, what are we trying to do? What does safety look like? Just like
Right.
knowing, well, what do mental skills mean? Like everybody wants to be calm and everybody wants to have confidence, but and besides saying never give up, like what does that look like? What does that mean? So the more understanding that we have and then practicing then and more concrete ideas, then the better. So I've never heard it broken down like that. I think it's awesome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Shucks, I'm glad I can offer you something like that. So
Absolutely.
this has been a fantastic conversation in so many ways. Um, I'm so excited about this. Thank you so much,
Thank
Barbara.
you. Well, you're so welcome. You're so
Can
welcome.
you?
I'm delighted.
Oh, thank you. Can you talk for a minute? I know before we went live, we talked a little bit about some of your online programs. And I mean, looking at your website, you have quite a few programs out there, from audio programs to your PDFs to your DVDs and your books. I know when I had first started hearing about you and reading your articles, you had your book Cutting One Run at a Time. That was the one that I was most aware of. Can you tell folks, tell our listeners about the programs that you have and how they can learn from you?
Sure. Well, actually, I have a book called The Gift, and that is a compilation of all of those articles that you read.
Oh, fantastic. Okay.
Yeah, over 6 years, I wrote articles for the HUH, the American Horse Association, and then I just divided them into subjects that built one upon the other. And that book, has been, a book that people have really enjoyed and really, have benefited from. And then I have that as an audiobook and a workbook. And then now I have some cutting products, for the cutters out there. I have a couple of DVDs, and I have my cutting book, and I have another book called The Little Book of Cutting Tips.
Okay.
And I've done some interviews over time with some different folks. Now, in this past December, I stopped training cutting horses for the public. I still ride some myself, and I've just been really busy, so I haven't been showing much of late. Actually, missed it. And we're talking about it's not about the ribbons, but I would like to be the security champion. So just put that out there.
Yeah.
So anyway, but now what I do is I do online courses, and I open and close them. Like I have, because I get very involved with people. I'm like I have a private Facebook page, and, I put something up every day that's, a thought or an inspiration, and people get to be friends. And, I'm just very, very committed to each online program. So I have one now called Writing Real, which is all about exploring this whole idea of personal values and love and choices and relationships with other people and letting go of what other people think. And then I have, at the beginning of the year, I have a course called A Powerful Way Forward, which really takes people through like a whole mapping. We're talking about kind of trying to understand, what's my next step and how do I weave it together. That's all about that. And then I've been having fun doing some cow horse clinics with my friend Sandy Collier, who is the, and so I have some wonderful live events with her, and it's really combined the mental skills. There's a whole afternoon of that, and then there's with a classroom session, and then she is just masterful at the guiding and collection, and from all the years that she's done such great work training with the reining horses, working cow horses, and then there's a segment on reining. But once we get that first mental skills and kind of some basic guiding, collection, cueing, seat kind of thing, then it kind of divides into two tracks. And I take the people more interested in herd work and cutting, and she takes the boxing, down the fence, the reining. She takes that, and we have a great time. And the synergy and the coming together of all those pieces of information is really magical. So I've been having, and I did a retreat with Julie Midnight, and that was really special, and I'll do one next year. Yeah, I really enjoyed, very, very much enjoyed doing, collaborating with other people, because there's just so much to gain from each person, and then, when we come together, there's something magical about that. Also,
isn't there? It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I find it's not addition, it's multiplication, right?
Yeah.
They're not just getting one and one, it's so much more than that.
Yeah, exactly. And then Sandy and I also do some retreats where, there's some coaching of riding, but in like beautiful places, and one of us teaches some in the arena, and the other one, and another group goes out on a trail ride, and we kind of dig a little deeper into the personal part of it. Sandy's a certified life coach, so that's really special. So I'm doing a lot of really fun things, and then I do some pure cutting clinics also. So
Okay.
it's great.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic. Are you getting involved at all in the new ranch horse division?
Yeah. So see, what's happening is that in fact, I'm just now. I'm going to go to some of the Stock Horse of Texas shows, and they have the ranch horse facility that's really growing by leaps and bounds, and those people, a lot of those people are really interested in the clinics that I do with Sandy, see, because she can provide the reining piece and the boxing piece,
Perfect.
and I can provide. Because people love all that, but one of the big challenges is that they don't have access to cattle to learn cattle, and they don't have access to learning the mental skills. Well, we dig deep into both of those things, and like at those clinics, people work cattle for 2 days solid, like 8 times in a row. So
that's awesome.
It's very exciting, yeah. And learn the mental skills.
Yes.
So
that's tremendous. And that's so needed right now in this new discipline, right? They need to have all of that plus the mental skills, because they need to, I know I see a lot of riders who haven't been competing, who have a new resurgence of interest in competing, or a whole brand new interest in competing because of the discipline. So the mental side of it, that's tremendous.
Yeah. So, I am so sorry. Excuse me. It's my real life dog just provided some audio for it.
No worries.
Yes. Yes. Well, of course, I love the mental pieces, and actually this year, in the course that I'll do in January, I'm hopeful to add another whole edition of the personal performance skills to that. So we'll see. And anyway, I've got a lot of projects coming up. Sandy and I are thinking of doing a project online. So, lots of things, exciting things.
That's awesome. And so people can find out about those programs on your website?
Yes, on my website. It's barbraschulte.com. There is a coming events section on the right side. The Riding Reel workshop banner is at the top. There is a place to sign up. I do free articles, and they're about one every other week. And there's a report, actually, that people love that really combines, like, how your eyes affect your riding, like how it's like about 10 pages long, and really like walks through the impact of getting these mental skills down and how they directly impact your riding. And so anyway, there's tons and tons of free information. And also I'm getting ready to update and redo my website. I'm really excited about that as well.
Awesome. Good. I know for the last couple of days especially, I've been perusing your site and looking at some of your articles and reading again some of your articles. So that's great.
Good.
That's awesome. And now I've noticed also that you're pretty active here on Facebook.
Yes, I am, and I'm inspired by you to do more Facebook Live things.
Oh, good. They're so much fun. They really are.
Yes.
And these audios are great, too, because I can sit around in my pajamas and talk, and nobody knows it.
Yeah, I know. That's good. Well, yes, I have a Barbra Schulte page, and then I'm, of course, a personal page, but I have a Barbra Schulte page.
Good. And then you have, is it a Cutting 101? Is that your page also?
I have another cutting. I have a Cutting Horses 101, and then the other thing that I have, and this is just but this is a sidebar. my husband and I lost our son, our only child, in the year 2000 to cancer.
Yes, that was
And
Zane, yes?
yes, and because of that, I have a huge heart for people who are grieving. So I have a page called Healing Thoughts on Healing in Horses, and that's another page I have. And I post like little art with sayings on them. And actually, I have a book as well about that. So that's another page.
Okay.
I guess I'm a little crazy, right? I should like kind of get my interest a little more narrow, but I can't help it. I just love a lot of things.
No. I think it's great, and actually I'm accessing that page right now so that I can share it with folks in the comments section of this broadcast, because I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. Healing Thoughts on Loss, Grief, and Horses.
Awesome. Fantastic. Okay, so before I go through our wrap-up questions, and I can't thank you enough. You have no idea how much this means to me to have you on this audio broadcast. Do you have anything else that you might like to share with folks?
I would say, Patrick, that I would just really encourage people to just know just how awesome they are, and how it never, ever, ever has to be proven. It just, like each person, we just are, we're just all like, we all contribute to this fabulous whole. And so the gift that you have and the uniqueness that you have and the way that you approach your horses and the way that you love to ride is really where your joy is. And as you embrace that and recognize what that is, and also that you're grateful for it, and you keep that in your heart and you're mindful, and then you make choices based on those values, right? You don't go down roads that you don't really want to go down because you think you're supposed to, or you're supposed to hurry up. Excuse me. And then to really study the mental skills and to get really good, the very, very best instruction that you can get. And to reach for the stars, like, don't limit your dreams. Like, if it's something that you love and you're really interested in, go for it and trust it and see it in your mind and know that it truly is yours. And it just takes baby steps and persistence and, believe in yourself. That would be my what I would say to people.
That's awesome. I hope you don't mind. We do have a couple questions that have popped up.
Sure.
Okay, great. Sure. And one, I just want to give a shout out and read a comment from Alan. Alan sends in, our barn had to read With Winning in Mind to help us relax in the pen. It was great. 4 of us qualified for L1 championships in Vegas that year. So that's awesome. He says, definitely picking up the talent code. We love the journey.
Good.
That's awesome.
That book is called With Winning in Mind. That's interesting. I don't know that book.
Oh, so that wasn't your book. Uh-oh.
No.
That's
It's
one that
okay.
we have to look up. I'm sorry, just the way that it was put across, I assumed it was yours. So that's okay. Well, I'm going to have to write that one down and look for it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Let's see.
Is it capitalized in the comment?
It is in the comments section here. I'll see if I can pin it. I can pin it to the top comment for you. There we go.
Okay.
Let's see where we are. And I'm just kind of scrolling through here, so it's going to sound really amateurish, and I don't even mind, because that's the beauty of these live deals.
Absolutely.
And Robin puts in, so this was about the time that we were talking about the video shows, the virtual shows. She says that getting over the fear of being videoed was a wonderful experience for her. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
We've got...
Yeah. See, that's another kind of external, quote-unquote, stressor, right?
Yes, right.
So that's a perfect baby step, so that's good.
Exactly. And let's see. So Alan has a question on here. What's your favorite way to remind clients to breathe, put the hand down, and to trust the process? So that's really 3 questions.
Yes. Well, let's talk about the process first, because, and I'm not sure if he's talking about the bigger piece or he's probably talking about it in a certain right, but in my coaching, we talk, like, that's what we talk about from the very beginning. Like, what is it that you want? Like, why do you ride? What makes this meaningful to you? Because one person loves to learn in lessons and another person wants to go haul for the world, and like the person that likes the lessons isn't interested in going down the road. So it's always about helping people feel empowered by what they love and what they value. That's the first thing. And to trust that journey. So as far as reminding to breathe and keep your hand down, that's where the scripting would come in and
yes.
the visualization. Because if there's something that I am doing that either I want to do it better or I want to replace it with what I want, then I put it into a script, and I ask my clients to get a script, and then they share it with me, and I ask them, okay, now what are the words that evoke the feeling? So, like in cutting, we sit deep in the saddle. Well, sit deep might be meaningful to one person, but collapse would be a better word for another person.
Yes.
And so I always ask them, tell me what I do as a coach that helps you, and tell me what I do that kind of either distracts or might even annoy you, because I'm all about giving you what works for you.
Yes.
And then the same thing about...
Bless you.
Excuse me. I just got a little sneeze.
Bless you.
Thank you. Then it would be a reminder to breathe. Eyes up, breathe. I would try to connect the whole sequence of feelings, like eyes up, breathe, and probably do exercises like the way they warm their horse up. They would be working on all those things, and then visualizing at home, and really like walking through and taking your time and reminding yourself to do the things that you want to do.
Yes.
And then just going for it and to have fun, and so that to allow it to happen. That part.
Fantastic. Very good. Very good. Okay, so let's see. Last question we have on here. Robin asks, any secrets or tips about how you keep your own energy humming along? That's a great
I can't tell secrets. No, I'm kidding. That was a joke. For me, it is the whole idea of learning, like of believing. Part of the work that in the Powerful Way Forward that we do is about what our beliefs are, because our beliefs really dictate so much of how we interpret and translate pieces of information. So one of my beliefs is that every situation that is difficult has in it an equal or greater than gift if I will look for that. so I always strive, not that I can do it all the time, but I always strive to flip things, either, personally that might take a little bit longer, or right there and then I've learned, to keep my energy. One of the things, that we didn't really talk about much is that this whole idea of our being fit in our physical body. I mean, I am not like gym rat fit, but I am getting more and more fit, and I've always had a certain level of fitness. And I think that this whole idea of like what is really important to you and living by it, like for example, my quiet time in the morning is really important. I have certain things I read, including my life purpose and my goals.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And just having some quiet time personally, some prayer time, and that's just very, very meaningful to me, and that makes my life rich. And I write things for which I'm grateful, and I am studying because of the values and the I really work towards being really clear that I have only X number of hours in a day. So I need to make choices about how I spend my time and what makes me happy. Because if I'm excited about a project, whether it's an online course I'm creating or a clinic that I'm doing, or a trip with my husband, I want to be excited. So I just train myself to seek positive energy. And again, it's not that I do it so perfectly. It really is a practice.
Yes.
But when you do it in both your life and in your writing, what happens is that you begin to really very, very quickly, I notice when my energy is getting not only low, because sometimes low energy is good because it's rest, but when it's kind of getting like, grumpy or feeling a little overwhelmed, or someone said something and I'm kind of reacting to it, like I notice it because it's not my normal state. And then I think about what I want to do with it. And it's a very empowering part of this whole training.
Yes.
To be very clear, but that we can always control our thoughts and our responses. And I just love it. I just think it's a very rich way to live, because, I feel like I'm always growing, and I love my work. I feel like it's helpful to who's ever meant to be a part of it. And for that, I'm very grateful. And, like tonight, this was great. I just enjoy things, each thing. It doesn't, it's not like my joy is going to be later anymore.
Right,
so.
Right. Well, and so again, there comes that theme of self-awareness, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's fantastic. And I love the way, and I'll just make it kind of short and maybe bittersweet, but I love the way that you talked about fitness, right? To me, since I've started hitting the road, I mean, basically I live on the road almost 100% of the time now, teaching clinics almost 7 days a week. I've found that for myself, fitness and nutrition have become even bigger of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're feeding yourself garbage and you're letting yourself down on the fitness side of things, you're going to get out.
Absolutely. You're exactly right. And a complementary way to view that is that our bodies are like the hard drive of a computer, and mental skills, writing skills, any kind of skill, is all of those things are the software. we are only as capable to reach our full potential as our body is in its finest form, because our body is, and our brain is how we express it. So if we're not hydrated, if our blood sugar level drops, or if we're, just not feeling real great, or we didn't sleep, because we didn't pay attention to our sleep, we just thought, it doesn't matter. All of those things we will ride, and we'll ride below our unique level of talent and skill. And also, because of the mind-body emotion connection, it's harder to reach
that goes back to the physiology controlling the psychology.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's just all so interesting. And I think making those things a priority, and I've been aware, and I've made them in bits and pieces in the past. So I think it's really easy when we all have busy lives and a lot of work to do, and you go, well, like today, I just don't have the time. I really have to do that. I just think through it more now. I don't really skip much of what's important to me anymore.
Right.
And I'm still wide open busy, but I just am very mindful now, and it's really important to me.
Yes.
So.
Very good. Very good. Okay, so that was our last question that we have on here. And I think that was a tremendous answer. We would joke it's the long answer to the short question, but the short question definitely needed an answer like that, because anything less is just shortchanging it. There is so much that's involved with keeping the energy there. The mental side, the physical side, all of that is so important.
Well, I just want to make another comment, Patrick, about energy. Really, energy is life. In fact, at HPI, the Human Performance Institute, Jim Lair talks about do not manage time, manage energy. And that our energy is always our indicator of how we're doing. And this is another whole part of the training, but to really manage the energy on the positive side of getting your energy back, and then, putting your energy out and then getting energy back strategically. So you need rest in order to grow.
Right.
If you have a flat line, or that's never good. Or if you just keep putting energy out, like Forrest Gump running, you get exhausted.
Right.
So you have to strategically get that energy back. So that's one kind of energy. The other kind of energy is that everything that we do with the horse has a type of energy. Like a fast circle in reining has that yahoo kind of energy,
Right.
And then the slow circle has that kind of serene energy. Like when I'm in the herd of a herd of cattle, I'm standing, looking. It's kind of a little bit like a Clouseau detective, kind of like a cat playing with mice, and then I go, and then that has an energy. So when we are aware that in our riding energy that we really think of it in terms of there's positive and negative, and then there's feeling good kind of energy, but there's also that kind of emotional energy that's connected to the moment in any ride.
Yes.
And when you see it in those terms, then you start to get the feel of it, because you understand that that's the essence. That's the real essence of the ride, right?
Yes,
is
absolutely.
getting into that energy.
Absolutely.
And then into that moment. So.
Right. Well, and the negative thoughts, the negative energy that we put up is so much more draining than the positive.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. And totally unproductive. So.
Yeah. And that's interesting. That kind of brings to light, and we could get way off topic, and we've talked for plenty long, so I don't want to keep you for this. But I was listening to an interesting podcast the other day as I was driving along, because I do a lot of driving along. But there was a doctor, and I don't remember the podcast or the name of the doctor, so please forgive me for that. But it was interesting because they said that the human body will actually die sooner from lack of sleep or lack of rest than it will from lack of food.
Yeah.
And so I found that fascinating, because it's like you talk about managing energy, right? Because you have to replenish that. You have to put that back in. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't, your body will literally break down. You cannot survive without replenishing that energy.
Yeah. In fact, again, in the mentally tough training, that's a key concept. That's what separates people. And there's really nothing ever more important than sleep.
Right.
I mean, this concept in general of recovery separates people. Exactly. But from the physical point, sleep is the most important life recovery strategy.
Right. Oh, fantastic. Okay, we're going to get into our wrap-up questions, because I have a feeling, Barbara, that you and I could talk for days.
I know. It's been so fun, Patrick.
This is awesome. I love this.
Good. I'm so glad. Well, it's great for me, too.
Okay, so our wrap-up questions. Let's see. The first one. Is there a practical step that you can give for our listeners that they could take right now to improve their personal performance skills?
Yes. To be very aware of your thinking, and to be always focused on what you want rather than what you don't want. So when you think, I don't want to be nervous, what you want is to be calm. So then you go about focusing all of your energy on being calm. If you don't want to drop a lead, instead of not wanting to make that error, you focus on what it's like to cheat your horse. To, number one, pick up the lead, and then what do you have to do to maintain, maybe going around a corner, or that a horse might drop a lead. Like, what do you have to do? So you get so focused on that. Because it's those unidentified, kind of rampant thoughts of playing over and over again all of those things that we don't want to go wrong, or that we fear, or that are our nemesis, our challenges. Those things are the things that make us nervous, right? And tight.
Yes.
And if we don't know the solutions, if we don't know what it looks like it's called a replacement. You always replace what you want or what you don't want with what you want. And if you don't know what that replacement looks like, then you get help with that, because maybe you don't know. You just know what you don't want. But I would say that for like one thing, that would be the single thing. And so then you build your world around talking to yourself about it, about seeing it, about gathering information about it. But I just really recognize that.
Awesome. Very cool. If you could ride with anybody, past or present, who would it be?
Oh, wow. That's a very interesting question. Nick Dowers. Do you know who he is?
No, I don't.
He won the Snaffle Bit Futurity, and he also won Road to the Horse 2 years ago in the Colt.
Oh, party. Yeah. Okay. Nick Dowers. Yes, I do know who Nick is. I don't know him personally, but I do know who he is. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He's really a gentle spirit, like authentic, very, very authentic person.
Yes, we have some mutual friends, and that's exactly what they say. That's exactly how they describe him.
And he's a brilliant horseman, and he's a big teacher, and he's like one of those people that really has like his natural talent and studies, and he gave clinics at Road to the Horse. I judged that year and had the pleasure,
Yes.
to watch him. And I was just fascinated because it was like he's the real deal kind of thing. So I really like his temperament. And also, I just, I don't mean this to sound soft, whatever, but I had no idea, but he has studied and read The Gift, the book that I was talking about. That's the compilation of articles over and over. And he always reads it in preparation for competition. Yeah.
No kidding.
So,
that's fascinating. Wow.
Yeah, it's cool. So, I would love to get to know him better and ride with him. It would be really fun. Really fun.
That's great. That's great. That's a good one for sure. All right. What is your personal definition of horsemanship?
I would say that that's an interesting. But you have good questions.
I got to stump you on the wrap-ups, right?
Yeah. I would say it would be to really gain an understanding before ever interacting with a horse. I mean, not that you can't interact with a horse without doing this, but to be a student forever about what makes a horse tick just in general, and being so focused on that to learn the nuances of like what, to be connected to yourself and your own emotions, because of course I'm so all about that, but have clarity about what you want, or like what like what the goal is, and then to really study and become very good at arranging it for a horse to gain complete confidence step by step. See, I'm all about that. Whether it's people or it's horses, I just want, or a desire for people to understand for them, like in their own journey, like what are the pieces, because we all, horses and people, have these unlimited capabilities, and the reason we get stumped is just because we don't know. I mean, if we knew, we just so like, I just think when we work with horses, if we really want to maximize the performance, or whatever it is we're doing, we have to really see it from their perspective, and to study what all that is and how we can learn what we need to do and be connected moment by moment, so that we can reward them. Like, that's one of the things that Nick did that was so interesting. Like, he was all about bringing a horse's energy up and energy down and energy up and energy down. And when a horse did something that was good just a little bit, then he would just let them, like, relax.
Mm-hmm.
Like, most people ask 10 more times.
Right.
And then they release.
Right.
Like, he was working a cow, and it was like, he made like 2 turns, and the horse was really good, and he like quit and like walked off and had slack in the reins. And I'm thinking, man, Barb, you can like learn something from that, So,
get in there, boy. Get it done.
Yeah, it's like, come on. So then, anyway, I just, and to me, his horse I completely understood, and then he went back and worked the horse a little bit more, and anyway, so I really think it's about building. It's about clarity about horses and about building their confidence.
Yes.
It's just about building your own confidence and being a partner. So
that's awesome.
Oh, I'm kind of long-winded. I'm sorry.
No. I love it. I love it. You know, when I started, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. When I started these audio broadcasts, and now we're number 5. Okay, we're just 5 into these. But I thought, oh, these are going to be like, 30, 45 minutes. I don't know if you've looked at your watch, Barbara, but we're pushing the 2-hour mark. And all of these broadcasts have actually lasted about 2 hours. It's fascinating. I love this. To me, it's just like the idea that you mentioned earlier about your collaboration with Sandy. It's this collaborative effort to me is so fantastic. It's energizing to me. I mean, we've been here almost 2 hours. We could have been here 15 minutes, and I wouldn't have felt any different. I mean, I love this. This is so great. This kind of coming together of the minds, the collaboration, I think is so refreshing, and I also think it's important for the industry, So the length of time, that's nothing.
So just to, when I just want to mention something that kind of expand very briefly from what you just said to something I said earlier. When I was saying to people, or I was talking about the personal meaning and how important it was about the joy, about horses and doing things in the way that you love to do it. And if the simplest thing brings you great joy, then you know that you're on the right track. And so you were just saying, how much energy this gives you. So one of the ways that we can kind of trust our own instincts is that when things give us energy, then they're right for us. See, it doesn't have to be judged by another person because that person may or may not agree. And this, I'm talking about direction and what you want to do or who you want to work with or who you want to hang with. When it feels good, that's what's telling you, yeah, this is it. This is good for you. And when it doesn't, it's that internal barometer is always right. So, when we start to seek things that give us energy, then we're just on this awesome road that's so fun and learning and expanding. And so, anyway, just wanted to mention that.
I love it. That's awesome. And that is exactly how I feel after every one of these calls. I look down at my watch at the end of all of these, and I think, it's really been that long? You got to be kidding me, It's awesome.
So, Patrick, are these just on your Facebook page? Where are these?
Yeah, so these are live right now on my Patrick King Horsemanship page. Also, as the broadcast has been going on, I've shared it with my personal page and with our Patrick King Horsemanship discussion page or group or whatever you call it. I don't know. So I'm doing all this techie stuff. I'll let you in on another secret. I'm doing all this techie stuff, and I'm not really a techie guy. I don't understand most of this stuff. I'm totally winging it, okay?
Yeah.
But
I understand that.
Yeah, so another avenue here is that these broadcasts have been picked up by iTunes as a podcast. So when I share them on my website as an audio, iTunes automatically picks them up and lists them as a podcast. So folks can go and subscribe to the podcast, and once they're up live or once they're completed on my Facebook page, they're shareable. Always and forever. Was that Barry White saying that? They're shareable, so they can go anywhere.
I see. Huh.
So,
good. Awesome.
They have been, so far, they have been so much fun. So folks can find you at barbraschulte.com.
Right, and also my Facebook page, Barbra Schulte.
And your Facebook page, good.
Yeah, and I would love, I'll be at Equine Affair in Massachusetts.
Good.
Are you going to be there?
I don't think so. I believe I'm scheduled for a clinic. I'm not sure where, but if something falls apart, I will be there, and I will pester you, and we'll do a live video broadcast from there.
There you go. There you go. Okay. Well, sounds good.
That's awesome. So one last thing, one of the things
Yes.
that I do always on all of my broadcasts, or almost all of them, is I ask at the end a question of the day. And this is for folks to answer. This is for our listeners to answer. And it's just random questions brought to mind by the topic that we happen to be talking about that day. But anytime I have a guest on, the guest gets to ask the question of the day. So I'm going to turn this over to you. I've asked you a zillion questions. Now you get to ask our audience the question of the day.
As it pertains to my presentation.
As it pertains to anything.
To our conversation.
It could be absolutely anything.
Okay. So, what idea did you hear that you can use immediately that you think will have an impact on your writing?
I love it. I love it. You guys heard it. All right, gang, put your answer to the question of the day in the comments section below this video whenever you get the opportunity. What idea did you hear that you feel like you can apply immediately? Barbara, thank you again so much for joining me here for episode number 5. This has been so much fun.
I'm the lucky one, Patrick. Thank you for inviting me. It's really been an honor, and good job on the great work you're doing. Just really exceptional.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're
Hang
so
on
welcome.
just one moment while we close the podcast here. Gang, thank you so much for tuning in for yet another 2-hour episode of our Talking About Horses audio broadcast. This week with special guest and kind of personal hero of mine, Barbra Schulte. Please tune in. Don't forget, invite your friends. Tune in next week as I chat with my friend Belinda Trussell, who was a Olympic competitor at the Rio Olympics in Dressage. That's going to be next Thursday, August 10th at 8 p.m. Don't forget, gang, you keep sending in questions, and we're going to keep talking about horses. Thanks so much for tuning in.